Anyway, okay, so C to D is 2.5 centimetres, right angled across, and then we are going to join the little rectangle together. This time though, I'm going to get you to do a bit of a tripper, 2.5 centimetres, and that becomes D.
Tina, if your shoes come see, can you just tell we're in the shoe room?
No problem.
Having a test.
Yes. We're going to...
Actually, if you wanted to waste any time, I could give this lot a test on this.
We don't need to waste time. Okay, we're going to join them together. If you would like to, you could actually do a dashy line to join those two together, because then we're going to do another line which is E, which is almost curved, almost on top. Dashy lines make it easier. Everyone following me so far? Oh, Norges in the shoe room. You know? Oh, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that. Okay, what are we up to? We're up to D to E. D to E, we're continuing that magic line from C to D. We're continuing that magic line across. I'm going to do a dashy line, same trajectory, 1.5 centimetres. And that becomes E. So continue C to D along 1.5 centimetres and slightly dashy line to a point at the end. Alrighty, now we're going to get out our French curve. We're going to get out our French curve. We're going to curve that line. We are going to curve that line. Now, rule of thumb. The distance between D to E will determine how high or how low your collar sits. If your angle that you draw this curvy line is only 1.5, the collar will sit pretty similar to what I'm wearing as a garment right now. The more shaped that you do it, the more higher it's going to sit.
Does that mean like
Yeah, yeah. So yours is sitting quite flat. See how mine sits quite high and quite up?
Yeah.
That's because it's a sharp line. If you want it to sit quite flat, you will straighten it off. Or hang on, which way does it work? The other way. Yes. If you want it to sit high, you sit it closer to C. I mean, it's closer to D. So the higher you want it to sit, the closer you'll go to D. The flatter you want it to sit, the further away you'll go. Having a look at your collar, do you want to just pull your hair up and show everyone your collar? See how that collar is quite a little bit, what I would call a bit flatter than mine? Sits away from the neck more, but it sits flatter. I think you were also wearing a collar on one of your jackets that sits a bit flatter as well. Okay, that for a flatter collar, you would have a much more severe angle. Okay, that kind of angle. The higher it is, the closer it's going to sit into your neck. And the rule of thumb too is, we're going to curve that line, but I want it to curve and hit back onto the original line about halfway. So if we imagined a halfway point, so that's D to NP, roughly about halfway. That first part is where I'm going to curve and it's going to hit into the original line. When I curve and hit into the original line, can you please then make this a solid line? Everyone following me so far?
Yeah.
So I've curved and I've hit the line and now I'm making it into a solid line. Okay, and roughly halfway gives you a nice shape. Okay, roughly halfway. So out to D, D is going to hit halfway between D, so halfway, E is going to hit halfway between D and NP. Everyone following me so far? And the beauty of this is, once you've done this first trial and you've got this pattern, you'll know the angle, you'll be able to see how it fits and try it on and see how it fits against your neck, and then you'll know, okay, if I want it to be flatter and I'm more away from the neck, I can make the angle more and make the angle less. Probably you wouldn't go much less, more straight up and down than this. 1.5 is probably the most, closest you'll get to D. If you go too much closer, it's going to start tucking in. So, not so much. Okay, then the lucky last thing we need to do on this baby, because is E to F. You'll notice there's a little right angle signal here. So we're going to right angle off of that existing line we've got. So right angle off of the E line that we've got, so just that end point, and bring it back out. Now E to F is the width of my top collar, including the stand. So how much is my top collar, do I want it to sit up and to sit out? Okay, and we're going to do as 8 centimetres, I think. Yes, we are, 8 centimetres. So E to F is going to be 8 centimetres. We're right angled. Remember this little angle here, please try and make a right angle. So right angle back to that curvy line and up, and we want to make it 8 centimetres. If I'm looking at this jacket here, and if we want to determine what that line is there, that line there is this centre back neck. If this is my jacket, that line there is this distance here. Okay, including, remember, 2.5 stand, and then includes in the top collar, so it's 2.5 plus whatever when you roll over to show on the outside. Add those two together, we're obviously getting 8 centimetres in total. That gives us exactly this collar here. And you can see the way it's sitting up 2.5 centimetres at centre back, that's included in the stand part. Alrighty?
I know you said this a few times now.
Yep, that's okay.
D
Keep
to
saying.
E makes, but if it's longer, it stands up more.
Okay, yeah, the straighter you make that line, the more it's going to sit into your neck. The curvier, or the more that angle starts to, from NP, always comes back to 0 at NP, but the more you have that angle, the more that angle comes down closer to your shoulder from NP, it's going to sit flatter.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, what changes it? Is it the curve of the line?
The curve of the line is one aspect, but not so much. It's actually the angle. It's actually the angle between these guys here that make it sit flatter or not. So it's this angle here. So if you have a line here, if you have a line here like that, and that's very much a 45-degree angle, it's going to sit closer to the body. You have it more of a 90-degree angle, it's going to sit up next to your neck, as in higher here. That makes sense. Yep. And to me, the only way that you learn from this process is as soon as you've done your first twirl, you will know. You will go to do a second twirl, and you might move this a little bit, and it's the best learning curve you ever got, because your next twirl will go, oh, that's where that collar sits, that's where this collar sits. You'll know that's really going to be your best learning curve for this. When you twirl 2 different angles, you will straight away see how differently they fit. And that's your learner.
Sorry, I just don't quite understand. The dot point that's second from the bottom that starts with D to E is 1.5 centimetres.
D to E is 1.5, yep. Mm-hmm.
It said at the bottom, at the end of that dot point, it says F is the stand width plus 8 centimetres. So should we be doing 10.5 from E to F?
F is the stand width. Oh, okay. Yo, it does say that, doesn't it, too? Yeah, I think you're right. F is the stand width, which is 2.5 plus 8. I think you're right. Let's do that. Sorry, people, my mistake. Yep. Rubby, my mistake.
So
We just want to know, so what are you planning on getting to today? I just keep looking at this stuff. Oh, no, keep going.
What are we up to now? Collar.
Sue's just explaining, you've probably gone further than Sue.
Okay.
She's explaining the collar now.
I'm not doing a roll collar.
No,
though,
we're
ignore
not doing the roll collar
That's
either.
just there for their information.
No. Jet pocket.
Yeah, we probably will. Probably get a jet and a welt done.
Jet and a welt
that's
done,
it.
and then stop.
Yep, maybe, yeah. Aim for that.
We're not going to be lining things with any of that.
No, because at half one now. Yeah, no.
Jet pocket, roll pocket, and maybe stop.
Yep. Alrighty, so we decided that I'd done a boo-boo. What was my boo-boo again? 10.5, thank you. So E to F is 10.5. Stand plus, I don't think that's what that is though, but anyway, I think that's an 8. So clearly last year I did a boo-boo, that's an 8. So last year I did the same boo-boo, I didn't read the instructions. I know, sat that girl fast.
So 10.5.
Yeah. Now I tend to ad-lib quite a bit, so I don't necessarily go by the notes, but thank you for picking that up. Okay, so we've got the beginnings. Let's turn the page. Turn the pagetta to page 12, to figure 12.
Oh no.
What was that? Everyone holds their breath. You can hear everyone go. Alrighty, so now we're going to start to do some workings of our collar. Okay, we're looking at our sketch here. We've got all our internals done, but now we're going to start to do some of the externals. What does the lapel shape look like? What does the top collar shape look like? The first thing I do as a step one is you define what that notch looks like and the lapel width on the inside of your roll. So I'm going to put my ruler where my roll is. That's and because the best way to judge it is when you're looking back on the body. You can see your body of your mane, so you can see how wide it's going to look on the body. Very hard to judge it when you fold it out and trying to imagine what that's going to look like on the body. That's impossible. So you imagine from your roll line, that's where it's going to fold over. How wide do I want my collar to be, and where do I want that notch to be? Okay. The most appropriate place to start it is generally halfway through your armpit. So if I imagined an invisible line that flows from the middle of my armhole, about halfway, that's a really good place to put a notch. Probably, oh, this one's a bit higher on this one. And that's about halfway, okay? So this jacket here, the notch is about, and by notch I mean that's what we're defining right now, is that cutout. Notch is about halfway on the distance of your armhole. This one here is sitting much higher, okay? And this notch here is not cut out, it's actually cut together. Doesn't matter the shape of your notch, it's still a notch, whether it's matching or it's separated out. So what we're going to do is we're going to define how wide and we're going to start to draw it in on this side. Even though there's still a, what's the word for it, a dart value in there, we're going to kind of ignore that a little bit, and we're going to draw in, and what the line that we're drawing in is this line here. That line there on our figure 12, that line with our notch. And we don't draw all the way up, we just draw a little bit above our notch, so about 2 or 3 centimetres above our notch. But what we're trying to define is how long is our notch, how wide is our notch, and what level is it at. And at the same time, you come with your lapel width. Now, they haven't really stipulated lapel width, have they? This dude here she's about 8 as well. Okay, so if that's where my notch, so I've kind of judged halfway, armhole, about halfway, and I've put just a little indicator or mark. I've done it in no particular place other than just to indicate roughly where I'm heading for, because I'm going to start to draw in my lapel and know my notch is going to be here.
How deep should the notch be?
I haven't even, that's what I've defined first is my lapel width. So I'm going to go up now, I'm going to start to go from nothing at my B and draw in how wide my lapel is going to be. Lapel is the lowest part. Top collar up here, lapel is this part here. How wide is my lapel going to be? I'm going to go up about 5 centimetres below where I've drawn that position of my notch, and I'm going to mark it in 8 centimetres from my roll line. So I've measured 8 centimetres in, about 5 centimetres below, because now I'm going to go up and start to draw in that position. And I reckon, as a rough guess, probably half of the distance between the width of the lapel and the roll line is how deep your notch is going to be. As to the width of it in terms of the opening of the edges of your notches, good question. This is about 4 centimetres too. Okay, so all I've done, gone from my armhole, roughly come across and just drawn in a mark in no particular place other than I know roughly that's somewhere where my notch is going to be. Then I've gone about 5 centimetres below that and marked in 8 centimetres from my roll line, and now I'm going to go back and start to draw in my lapel.
Sorry, what's the 8 centimetres?
The width of your lapel. How wide is that lapel? The lapel that I'm wearing is quite skinny. Guys, so I'm just going to have to answer this because it's my wrinkle. Sorry.
Just not the last. No, so this is NP, you've got to come out for A. Oh yeah, it's got two times, so yeah. You can just draw a straight line. Yeah, the only one you want to do dash lines is these ones because you like you need to curve it.
Sorry guys, sorry.
Quickly catch up to you guys.
Sorry?
I just need to catch up to you guys.
That's okay. Yeah, you might just have to wait until we get up to the jets and the welds. When we start doing jets and the welds, I'll then be able to kind of help you walk through this because I'm going to leave the guys to work on their own a little bit. So just give us a little bit more time to finish off this collar, and then I'll be able to come and help you step by step. At the moment, I just need to get these guys moving. Sorry guys, so we've come back into, sorry about that, we've come back into our roll line. We've measured in 8 centimetres, we've marked roughly halfway where we want our notch to be. In no particular, I could have put it out here, I could have put a line, as long as I roughly knew. And the reason why I roughly want to know where that notch is going, because about 5 centimetres but roughly below it, I want to mark in my 8 centimetres, which is the width of my lapel. I'm now going to draw in that lapel line, okay? I'm going to probably stop a couple of centimetres below, remembering all of these lines we can rub back to or extend, so by no means is anything set in concrete. So I'm going to draw in my curvy line. Ooh, I might just flick it the other way. And I think I'm going to do a combo of 2 different lines because I think my lines, I'm going to flip my ruler the other way to get a curvy line, not quite working. And there's not, it's just because I've drawn an 8 centimetre mark there, if I go a little bit inside of that mark or a little bit outside of that mark, nothing's set in concrete. It's just a guide to go with. So I've just drawn a curvy line. I'm trying not to make it too rounded and too curvy, because as you can tell, most lapels, this one's probably a little bit more curvy, that one's probably a little bit more curvy, but most lapels are kind of a straight-ishy kind of curve, if that makes sense. They're not really bowing out. And then really it is a muck and play with it. Suck it and see, muck it and play. I don't know what the saying is for that one. Suck it and see, I don't know. So I've just extended that lapel line up, and now I'm going to go back in and draw in roughly where I want my notch to go. And like I said, roughly half the width of my, and by no means is there any exact amount. I've probably done mine about 3.5 centimetres apart. You can do it wider if you want, 4, but whatever the width of my lapel, I've roughly done it halfway. Okay, so from B, I've measured out from my, just below where my notch is going to be, and I've just drawn a curvy line. And really also it's a matter of, if this line here, mimics more this shape here. If I wanted it to be a shallower lapel being the bottom part of my collar, I would then draw it in much skinnier. But I want it to be quite a wide lapel. The reason why I'm doing a wide lapel with you guys, it's easier to sew. This little baby here that's a skinnier lapel, a bit trickier to sew. A notch that touches together like this, a little bit trickier too. You'll find that a notch that is open and a wider lapel for your first jacket, much easier to sew. We're going to make life much easier for you. So it's just a matter of drawing in that arc, and you can see I've gone all the way through, just drawing in that arc, and then drawing in where my notch needs to go to. And then we're going to go back in and we're going to rub out lines we don't need.
Sorry, I'm just looking for a size 10 tina model.
I don't think we have any tinas in here, do we?
I think the 30s of 10. So we've got one tina model in there, that's why
Which room did you come from?
where the 30 is up, so just back from there.
Okay, did you try the big room next door?
Not yet.
Yeah, I did see a leggy lady in there before, but I don't know if she's still there. No, is there anyone around the corner?
Tina.
No.
I needed one the other day, yesterday, at the very end on the right. That's where they
As in
were.
workshop 1 or workshop 2?
That's one.
On the right.
On the right hand side?
Yeah.
And there's some in there.
Yeah, that's
You might just
yesterday
have to
there were.
see.
That's okay, I
Walk the
really
halls.
appreciate it. Just, yeah, I need to find a room, so.
No, keep going, have a look, babe.
The whole class is not really.
No, not going to work for you, is it? Okay, now that I've drawn in that notch, I'm literally just going to go rub back. And so much of this, unfortunate for you guys, is a little bit of muck around with it and see. I'm not going to say suck it and see anymore because apparently that's not kosher.
How long have you been saying that for, Tina?
I just realised, get your heads out of the gutter, man. Okay, are we ready? So we've drawn in an archy line, and really it is let's play school and see. You'll notice that there's a bigger notch over here. Nothing wrong with it. Just a bigger notch, wider notch. Might be slightly higher, slightly lower than mine. We're roughly aiming for halfway through, and you can see now that my notch is sitting a little bit lower than halfway. There's no 100% right in this, people. It's once you do your trial, you'll see what it looks like, and you'll make different choices for your next trial that you do. But this is a good, happy place to start with. It's a good default. Yep.
It's like shaky.
You'll notice that this one's slightly bigger. Nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing. You've all done exactly the right thing. So maybe excuse me about so we put this side, that side.
I want to make it look nice though.
Oh!
And freehanding is fine too. Beautiful. Freehanding is fine too. You don't need to necessarily use a French curve.
Where's the notch? Where's the notch a particular measurement? Alright, eyeballing it is. We'll find out. Let's do a nice big one.
No. Mine is what? If you were going to draw one like mine, you wouldn't actually have an opening at all. It would be one line. This is one line stone as the seam on one side versus the other. So yeah, but we're not doing that version. This version is way too hard for beginners. We're doing the easy version, which is an opening. So if you make a mistake, it's not such a biggie. It's not so noticeable. This will show up lots of mistakes, and if you don't do it 100% perfect, you know. Okay, what's up next, Joe? Now we've done our notch and our pretending on the inside of our garment. We're literally going to fold our master on that roll line. So I'm going to fold back onto that roll line, starting at point B, fold my master back onto itself all the way along that roll line. all the way along that roll. Oh, seriously out of control, isn't it? And now we're going to draw in. Try as much as you can, hun, to work along. You can write in annotations, you can draw in centre back, centre front. There are lots of things you can be doing while you're waiting. Okay, now that I've folded it in half, I'm going to look through and trace through that curve with the notch that I see. Okay, I'm just tracing through the curve onto this side. Trace through the notch. Okay, so all I've done is just trace through the notch that I've seen on this top that I've folded over. Then I'm going to open him out and retrace onto the right side, because when I traced through, that went onto the wrong side. I'm going to open it out and I'm going to retrace it onto the right side, please, for me. Sorry? Yeah, you can split them. But hang on. Sorry, guys, if you are going to split through yours, remember there's a kick pleat on the back of your centre back. So at least allow about 8 centimetres on that centre back, because you're going to 5 centimetre kick pleat plus a few centimetres for danger money. So just make sure you're not cutting too close, because you don't want to cut the kick pleat off.
And the centre front doesn't need so much space.
Something just fell down. Yeah, no, centre front, because we've already put our 2 centimetre extension on it. So yeah, you're pretty safe. Yeah. So all I've done is I've folded on that roll line, from B to NP all the way up. Or not NP, B to A, sorry. B to A, and then I've traced on the wrong side, traced in my lapel and notch, opened it out, and on the right side, retraced it in my lapel and my notch.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
It doesn't work.
Oh, you don't have enough space.
It's also like a really weird...
Just get out your sticky tape and stick on some.
It's also a very odd shape, so maybe I'll just change it.
No, did you need sticky?
I've got some sticky.
Just stick on. Grab sticky tape and stick it on, babe. Not a biggie. Not a biggie. Okay. Oh, it's the bucket man. Thank you, bucket man. I just write here, thank you.
Bucket man.
It's the bucket man. Oh, he brought our bucket back. Alrighty, okay, so we've now got our lapel drawn. Does everyone realise, having a look at this jacket here, the reason that we've flipped it to the outside is because our roll line is here and our whole jacket includes the lapel, it rolls back on itself. So that's why we're flipping it the other way, because it's almost like it's an extension that it rolls back onto itself. We now need to finish it off. We now need to look here. So far now we've drawn in this outside line with a bit of a notch here. We need to connect it to make our top collar, and then redraw in our neckline so that it matches our notch. You will notice that on this example in our study gear, that notch sits much higher, or not much, it sits a little bit higher than an existing neckline. Ours sits a little bit lower, so we'll draw it down lower. There's nothing right or wrong. This is this notch here on our paperwork probably sits a little bit higher, like this notch here does. The one that we've got in our on our garment sits lower. You can do it at any height you want. Once again, I've just done a generic halfway through the armhole height to show you that. But when you start to do your first twirl, you'll decide for yourselves. I don't like where that notch sits, so you'll automatically know when you do this part on your next pattern, raise it up higher, okay? The only thing to note to self, you probably wouldn't want your notch going much higher, because mine, when it folds in, would be basically level with that. This part here on your block is that bone there on your neck. So you probably wouldn't want your notch sitting much higher than your centre front, where that centre front bone is. So probably what's on our study guide here, with that notch there, that's as high as you'd ever go with a notch. If you did it much higher than that, your notch would be then sitting out right up here on your shoulder, probably a little bit too high for a garment. Okay, being that it's a feature, and also being that it will affect the curve of your neckline. Alrighty, so now let's do two things. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to redraw in that neckline so that it matches the notch. This is one of my top tips. I tend to draw the line when it comes in, I draw it off of the baseline of my notch, if that makes sense. So that it's almost like you're drawing from the baseline of that notch and then curve it up into your neckline. Everyone understand what I mean? Versus a different way of doing it, if you were going to extend out that line from here, use the top line notch and then curve it around, it's not going to give you such a nice shape. Tend to follow the baseline of a lapel, and then from that line curve it up into your neckline. Okay, I want you to draw that line in for me. So we're just going to, from NP to the point of our notch, we're going to do a nice curvy line to join the two together. You can freehand it. I'm just going to pivot mine around. You can freehand it. Leave my point there to mark it up. I'm just going to freehand mine. Coming around, coming up into NP. Okay, is everyone following me so far?
No, I need to catch up.
Okay, so we're following the line of our lower part of our notch. I've just spun my pattern around a little bit so I can freehand it. I like to work the way I go. And I'm following that existing line, and then I'm curving it up to become, so that's going to be your new neckline. This is your old neckline that you're going to hash out. That's going to be your new neckline that's going to come up into NP. So I've just curved, following the lower edge of that notch, from that notch point, curve it around up into NP for me. Okay, so where are we up to on ours? You've done your sleeve?
Yes.
Cool bananas. Okay, so we're going to go back to the previous slide on yours. What's the previous one? Looking back. Yeah, that's the one there. Sorry for that. We are going to mark in our waistline for a start. So draw a line and mark a point, and then mark next to a waist. So that's going to be where your waist is. Hip waist. That's your waist down here. Yep. That's your waist there. 5 centimetres above it. Oh, sorry, you're supposed to. Oh, did you? There should be that should got your 2 centimetres extension. So 2 centimetres on the inside, I want you to mark in a line for me. So go back and do here. Not on the outside, but on the inside. Okay, so is everyone following me so far? This is a little bit like dot to dots, join the dot points. Once you get this concept in your mind, you can manipulate it to be whatever you want. So far what I've done is we've retraced in that neckline to join our notch point.
Those two, 3 marks. Those two, 12 out of 13. Is 13 correct?
Oh, I think
Emma and Yolani got 13 correct. Jana and Dana and Marco got 12 correct. No, they've all got over 10. They've all did, yeah. I don't know whether it's because I threatened them.
Yes, maybe. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue this line to join into our centre back neck. Okay, to finish off our top collar. That's this line here. That's joining in this line here. We're going to start life at a 90-degree angle, which is F here. We've got F. We're going to start life at 90 degrees. I'm just going to draw in a 90-degree line that's probably about 3 centimetres long. So really important that that's 90 degrees. Can anyone tell me why it's really important that centre back seam is 90 degrees?
So it joint like
That's this seam here. That's this seam here. So this is going to be 90 and this has got to be 90. So it's a smooth line coming through here and here. Otherwise it will be a point which we do not want. So now we've literally got to join this line here with this line. And the most appropriate line that we can use is an ever so slight S-bend. So not an S like that, but ever so slightly S-bend. So we start life going out ever so slightly S-bend it in going in. So it's ever the slightest S-bend you've ever imagined in your life is what we're going to do to join those two lines together. Sometimes your two lines, depending on how wide your collar is at the centre back, sometimes that line might not be an S-bend, it might be more, if I continue with my 8 centimetres, it might have been more like a C line or an arc. So depending on the shape or how wide that top collar is, as to what shape that would be. So I've done an S-bend, but if it was a skinny top collar, then it would be more like just a C or an archy shape. Everyone following me so far?
Just catching up.
That's okay. We are now going to draw in, I want you to write on it for me, top collar and lapel. So this section here is our top collar. That our whole front, when we look at our jacket, remember, our jacket here, our whole front includes our lapel. So our front and our lapel come together. They become one. Our top collar is a separate piece that we attach. Okay? So we're just going to write on here. We're going to get out our coloured pen and we're going to draw around our top collar in our coloured pen, and we're going to write on it, I'm going to write top collar, just so we're really clear on what our top collar is. Grab out our coloured pen, and remember our top collar goes from E to F, curvy line down to NP, new neckline to pivot point, don't go down to across the top pivot notch, and then up that outer edge. Okay? Grab it. I want you to grab a colour and do that for me, please. New neckline. Follow that new neckline, people. Want to follow that new neckline as much as we can. On the top of that notch. Notch being the cutout. Top of that notch. But the two things that I'm really interested in, when between E and F, where that collar comes off of E and F, I want to see right angle corners. Must have E and F corners, must be right angles. Alrighty, so grab out your colour, draw in your colour for me, so that you can define what your top collar is. And that's your top collar. Your lapel, and we're going to write underneath what your lapel is. Lapel was down here. That belongs to your front. They go together. Your whole front piece and your lapel will become one. Top collar is a separate piece. Okay. Everyone following me so far? You've drawn him in. So, and you've extended that line out 2.5. Now I want you to mark him as what we had with the letters. He's A. So put an A on him and put a B on him. He's a B, isn't he? Yeah. I want you to join A and B, but I want you to continue to extend that line about 10 centimetres extra. Alrighty. We're going to put a button and buttonhole in. Does anyone know how to annotate a button and buttonhole? You do? I want you to grab one of those markers, board markers, and I want you to draw a button and buttonhole annotation up on the board for me, please. I know, scary territory. The world is what. Do it big so we can see, for those of us that are blind. Do a giant one. Do a giant. Where is it?